Morning, everybody. My name's Brian Hoare from Ztally, and I'd like to welcome you to this observability session we're doing this afternoon in conjunction with CMG. What we're going to do is we're going to walk you through observability and some of the key points that you need to be aware of, especially in the mainframe environment, because going back a few years, the mainframe was like an island. It was just on its own. Now it is not. It is part of the toolkit for the business. And the areas that we believe we need to focus very much on are things like automated capacity. Automate as much as possible with your IBM licensing. Oops, sorry, come back. Automated capacity with the licensing and take control of your AWLC and your billing. Resource planning, which is all about capacity planning, understanding what is going on so that when you move to a new configuration, you get the right configuration for the business. Cost control and budgeting and chargeback. A lot of companies don't use that, but I think it's very, very important that companies start thinking about that. Especially for the mainframe, because if you don't understand what's going on, it's very difficult to manage. And then, of course, understanding analytics, running analytics on the mainframe. We do it on just about every other platform we have. Why not do it on the mainframe? A little bit about Ztally. I'm not going to talk about them too much, but we've been around for quite a few years, 20 odd years, employees globally, good growth this year, lots of customers. And one of the things we do, if we don't have an office, we've got business partners there representing us. So let's talk about, observability is key to business growth. And the whole marketplace has gone through a lot of change in the last couple of years, especially with COVID. That has been one of the big change factors. However, if you look at the mainframe and you look at its relationship with the other parts of the environment, the IT environment, it is becoming much more integrated. So the applications can very easily stretch across mainframe to x86 to various other platforms. So when problems occur, we need to be able to understand what happens to them and how to resolve them. So we manage applications, we're covering the whole IaaS, and we look at everything that's going on through the business. How does this all affect the business? Real-time visibility. When there are issues and there are problems, we can quickly identify them. Let me give you an example. Let's go back 10, 15, 20, even 30 years. You'd go to an ATM, an automatic teller machine or a cash point or whatever they were called in what part of the world you're in. You'd put your card in, you'd get your money out. And that transaction would probably only go through 2 or 3 different levels, maybe a database, check on a few other things. Now it goes through a huge amount of checks and balances. So the chances of a problem occurring and affecting performance, the probability if something does go wrong can be quite high. So we need to be able to understand when there is an issue, where it is, and what we need to do about it automatically. I talk very much about aligning IT with the business context. It used to be a case of the business would come to IT and the business would say, hey, I want this. And IT would say, well, we can kind of give you what you need, but not completely. Nowadays, it is totally the other way around. It's not the tail wagging the dog. It's very much the business will say to IT, I need this and I need it by this date, and this is what I'm prepared to pay for it. If IT cannot deliver, guess what? The business will take their business elsewhere, and it goes on all the time, which, if you're a mainframe, affects us. What are the goals of observability? Let's be proactive. If you understand what's going on, it doesn't matter. It's not just the mainframe, it's everything. If you understand what's going on, most problems, before they impact customers or impact the system, if you can be proactive about it, if you understand them, they don't just happen like that. there's usually a degradation of the issue. And if you can monitor it, you can start to see how things are starting to go wrong. It could be something simple like the amount of kicks events. You know, last week there were 200, this week there's 250. Why? What's going on? Understand, be proactive before it affects any of your customers. Control. We're not just the mainframe, we're right across the enterprise. The data, the applications, they do stretch right across the whole environment, the whole IT environment. So as life changes, applications change, they're reaching out to other areas within the organization that they didn't. This is going to take control to make sure that when you implement any new optimization or any changes, nothing goes wrong and you can, your performance and tuning is optimized. Collaboration. One of the areas that I know a lot of companies are now really focusing on, and I will come on to this a little bit later, is collaborating between everybody within IT. Forget boundaries. If I have a problem with a Linux box, hey, maybe it's something that's been affected by the mainframe. So we've got to have, very clear communication between each area. And you'll hear this several times. It's all about the business. Better manage business risks. And with every change, there is a risk, and support the stakeholders. And if this doesn't happen within the organization, guess what? Things will start to break, things will fail, and companies, then maybe they won't be around for as long. Mainframes are critical. This is one of my favorite slides. As I said, I know a number of you have attended this session with me before. Look, these are just some of the obvious statistics, and they are really good, whether it's an airline, whether it's an insurance company, the mainframe is core. Here in the US, there's probably 75, 80% of the mainframes are outsourced, and that's the way it is. Now, that says that probably 25% are mainframe here to stay, they're not going away, they're critical to their business. The other 75%, a lot of those applications are legacy applications. Some of them are 30, 40 years old, maybe even older. But companies have decided to outsource that part of their business because those applications are so critical and they just run and run and run. So, mainframes are here to stay. They're very important. And if you look at the new Z16, that's a phenomenal machine. IT organizations, what are some of these key drivers that we have here? Number one, it's the customer. The customer is the most important person here, because if you lose your customers, what happens? You lose your revenue, and the rest is history. So being very customer-centric is really important. We all buy stuff online. Some of those online transactions will hit a mainframe. We all banking. If you do your banking online, which I bet just about everybody here does, you touch the mainframe. If you are online and you are looking to do something digital, buy something, check your bank accounts, check your 401k, look at the stock market, update your insurance, any of those types of things. If you don't like what you see in front of you, guess what? You can get the same information in a much better format, and you can get it easily and quickly. Customers will flip from one to another. And think about it. I've got a couple of brokerage accounts, but I use 2, 3 brokerage systems to look at them. It's just the way I am. Some people have more, some people have less. But the point here is customer centricity. Data-driven agility. It used to be that we didn't take as much notice of the data. Let the data drive us forward. Look at the history. This is really all about understanding where we've been, where we are today, and where we're going. And there's a number of examples of that. Analytics. Let's look at how the data's performed. What have been the issues? And if we look at it in a more specific sense of things like ZOS, CICS, MQ, DB2, anything that runs on the mainframe and beyond, then the data can drive us forward and we can learn from where we've been, where we are today, and grow. There's a statistic that says that organizations that don't embrace data-driven agility will easily fall behind. You've got to be adaptable. And again, this comes back to business and IT convergence. And I've talked about the mainframe and I've talked about the non-mainframe convergence. It's coming together. So this is how the business is going to drive. And the mainframe is just another tool in the business toolkit. Some of the issues that are going on out there and the mainframe strategies, contractual and licensing optimization. People think, okay, yeah, all right, we've got our ELAs with not only with IBM, but we've also got it with a number of the other ISVs. Well, unless you understand that license, and especially with IBM, is it AWLC? Is it TFP? Which flavor of TFP is best for our business? It's going to be a real struggle to negotiate the best billing model for you. That's if you do billing, and make sure that you get the best agreement with your vendors and ISVs. So again, contractual, understand the licensing is really important for your particular business. Software portfolio optimization. Like most industries, the software industry is very much companies being taken over. If you think about a couple of the more common ones in the last couple of years, Hostbridge were just been taken over by CA Broadcom. They also took over VMware about 12 months ago. ASG, Allen Systems, were taken over by Rocket. So a lot of these companies have similar type products. So if company A is taking over company B, when it comes time to renew your license, companies will obviously offer new products. Make sure that there's no duplication there. This isn't just the mainframe, these renewals, they're also moving out to non-mainframe as well. So there's a lot of product, a lot of complexity, and make sure you've got your IBM, the best IBM license for you. Rehosting, replatforming. What are we going to do with our current environment? Do we move to the cloud? We're going to move to Z-Linux. IBM are making a huge push with Red Hat, Z-Linux. What are we doing? Why should we go to the cloud? Why should we stay in-house? Should we go to be outsourced? I mentioned earlier on about a lot of companies are outsourced. Maybe just outsource the legacy applications, especially if we don't have the source code. We don't have anybody that really understands it. There's a lot of applications out there. And something that I think people should potentially do, have a look and see what your oldest mainframe application is. And I think you'll probably find it's 40 years plus. Have a look, go through the exercise. And if anybody wants to pop it into the chat window, I'd be really interested. Capacity optimization, automate as much of this as you can, from billing to chargeback to your IBM licensing, understanding what is going on with your environment, to capacity planning. Automate everything you possibly can, because we haven't got the people, we haven't got the knowledge, and capacity optimization is something we've got to do with everything. System performance and application performance. Hey, most of us have performance monitors, Megamons, Tmons, MainView. They're good, they work. They're great at optimizing system performance. They're good at solving problems when things go bump in the middle of the night. Not quite so good at long-term history and understanding what's going on and trending and capacity planning, but they are very good for what they do. All right, and that's exactly the same for application performance. System could be running well, but we also need to make sure that the application is performing optimally as well. So there's a lot of strategies here that we have to take care of. Do more with less. How many times has your manager turned around and told you that? Why do we need to do more with less? It's not a case of, oh, let's try to do it. It's a case of we have to do it because of scarcity of mainframe skills. People are retiring. They're moving on to other things. They're doing not just mainframe stuff, but they're doing other non-Z platform stuff as well. So their skills, their specific skills, are being reduced. Lots of source code knowledge. Yeah, look at some of your oldest legacy mainframe applications. I mentioned this earlier. As I said, a lot of companies are just outsourcing those applications. When was the last time you had a new recruit that was just a mainframe person? You don't see a 25 or a 26-year-old come into your environment on a regular basis, brand new people. A lot of the companies are doing a lot of things in recruiting or getting people into the mainframe, but they are being gobbled up by other companies, especially some of the outsourcers, and that's not a criticism, as soon as they're available, and they're getting very, very good jobs. Cost control, spend less, do more. Understand your budget. There's a saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So identify who is spending all the money. You know, what application, what business unit, where is all the expenditure going? Be visible about it. Make sure everybody's aware of it. The complexity of some of the billing models out there. A lot of companies going back 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago used to use or still do use SaaS MXG. Companies would then put it in a container or in a small LPAR, and a lot of companies have now moved that off the mainframe completely. Why? Because it's so expensive. So you've got that constraint, but you've also got issues where some of the more common billing and budgeting and chargeback systems are being sunsetted. They're being retired. They're going to be around, but you know, if you look at the more common ones like CA Broadcom have several, they're not going to be around for too much longer. They're complex to use because a lot of them are written in 3270 format. They're not easy, and that's something that a lot of the mainframe products are starting to make a lot more visually and a lot easier to use. If I could get that word out, digitalization and APIization. Digitalization. Pre-COVID, what's that, 3 years ago, the stats were about 17, 18% of companies were looking to really embrace digitalization over the next 2 to 3 years. Post-COVID, that number's in excess of 70-odd%. Digitalization is here. Think about how our life has changed because of that. You can't buy an airline ticket. You can't do anything these days. You know, order Starbucks. This isn't an advert for Starbucks, but you can't order something like that without it being digitalized. And it's great when it works, which it does 99% of the time. So yeah, we've all had the hiccups where it doesn't work. APIization and data connectors. The mainframe is not an island, and there are more and more APIs being written to get data to and from non-mainframe data to mainframes and vice versa. APIs are out there, and there are a lot of connectors as well. You know, things like Azure and AWS, if we want to move to the cloud, or Splunk, you know, these data storages, they're everywhere. So this is making it life a lot more flexible. And of course, by doing all of this, you don't want to increase your costs, which you may well do. Hybrid or not hybrid? Mainframe's perceived as monolithic. Mainframe is actually probably the most efficient CPU there is. There used to be lots of talk about modernize the mainframe. I think it should be called modernize applications. It's not the mainframe at all. It's still got this perception as being monolithic. Needs process planification. My son works in an agile environment, and they'll get a new change into production in 2 hours, maybe, something like that, very quickly. You try doing that in 2 weeks, 2 months, in some cases, on a mainframe if you need to make the change. But with the advent of non-mainframe workloads and connectivity, whether it be APIs or whether it be connectors, it has to happen a lot quicker, and it is. And it's complex. Come back to what the problems were, the mainframe and all the other computers, IT, they're connected. So the complexity is growing, the complex integration with the rest of IS. So human resources, cost control, hybrid world, time to turn to a data-driven decision making. Data-driven decision making, get my words out, means working towards key business goals by leveraging verified, analyzed data rather than merely shooting in the dark. So we're taking the data and we're actually using it. And we're using it for analytical purposes. Pick out an industry, and just about every industry is using this now. I like to talk about the sports stars. Houston Rockets, the basketball team, they are really big into this, and they measure every player of theirs, what they eat, when they sleep, what they do on the court. Do they pass the ball forward, backwards, sideways? How many runs do they make forward? They analyze all of this. It's the data that drives them for them to decide what type of players they need. They also, very interestingly, and I'm not a basketball fan, decided that they were going to make a real focus, and it was successful for them, where they would throw for 3 points rather than take it to the 2 point, because they found that they would get a higher points per game if they went for more 3 points. 3 good reasons to engage with Ztally. The Ztally Smart Data Platform. We collect data, APIs, hopefully everybody knows what they are, SMF, logs. You are running something on a mainframe, you will either generate logs and or SMF records. So we collect all this information. Why do we do that? Understand what is going on. SCRT if you run it, and we have well over 100 connectors to other non-Z products. So if it's not a connector, we've probably got an API, and APIs are out there all the time. What do? We enrich all of this. We use the data. If we collect the data, it can be used by multiple parts of the solution that Ztally has. We use it for reporting. What's going on? Exploring. Where are we going? What are we doing? Predictive analysis. Hey, these kicks or IMS transactions have been, we got 6 months worth of data or 12 months worth of data. Where are they going to be in another 3 months? What's going to happen to them? Take the statistics, expose, identify where the problem areas are. Observability is already built into the product. IT Ops. What is IT Ops? Hey, let's help deploy these new applications. Maybe it's a distributed application, but part of it touches the mainframe. Make sure it goes into production. FinOps. FinOps is a fairly, I came across FinOps about 18 months ago. It tends to be a term used for non-Z platform. But FinOps is saying, understand all the different departments that are working on a particular application, what the costs are, the status of that application, but everybody being able to see what everybody else is doing in a statistical format. So everybody can understand if somebody's on track or they're behind, how much money they're spending, above budget, behind budget, etc., etc. Very good way to communicate. And then, of course, predictive ops. Where are we going? Collect any apps to the Ztally platform. One of the things that at Ztally, we are really big on is being able to produce GUIs, displays that you don't need to be a ZOS genius to be able to understand them. So a lot of people that are using this are non-CS people, like the business units, like the end users. They can understand and say, hey, look, these are my kicks transactions just for my area. So I can start to identify the performance, how they're trending, what the futures are looking like. Also, the cost of them. How much does it cost to run? How much storage does it use? What's the cost there? Is there a chargeback? So people that are not experts can understand what is going on with the environment. Add on to that the REST APIs or APIs. Typically, we prefer to use REST APIs. And web APIs and HTTPS. Supporting cloud hybrid. And I mentioned AWS earlier, I mentioned Azure earlier. You know, how do we support this? IBM with C-Linux and OpenShift, which a lot of people are starting to talk about with containers. You know, Z-Linux, ZCX containers, and OpenShift. It's something that is certainly out there. So again, we've talked about containers on the mainframe for a long, long time. Now they're here. IBM are making a superb job with that. So 3 steps to build your success. 1, smart data collection. We must be able to understand the data as it's collected, and it must be done easily and transparently. Enrich it, reuse the same data if need be, have different solutions, look at the same data and be able to use it. Any errors, when there are problems, when there's an inconsistency, again, make sure we can see that. Really ends up into allowing the business to make easy decisions that we're going in the right direction and we are growing. Business value on data-driven decision making, DDDM. Cost management. What are our costs? How much is each department costing us to get their data, to run their business? Resource optimization. Make sure that we are optimizing the usage of all resources, whether it's MSUs, whether it's storage, make sure it's happening. Contract negotiation, and I think this is where, to me, it really all starts. You've got lots of different license options, not only with IBM, but also with your ISVs. You have to understand what they would do for your business. It could even be worse, especially with some of the IBM ones, because you may have 3 or 4 different flavors. You may have TFP, you may have VUE. You could even have a little bit of AWLC or CMP, and especially with TFP when there's 5 flavors. So all of a sudden, you've got lots of different opportunities there, lots of options. Make sure you understand it's the right one for your business. Traceability, you be able to keep an audit, make sure that as things happen, you can make a decision on it. For example, you want to see what's happened to MQ or a IMS transaction or a DB2. I haven't mentioned DB2 yet. A DB2 transaction over the last 6 months. Make sure you can do that and do it easily. Don't want to put that massive amount of data up onto the mainframe because it could easily cost you money. Put it onto another platform where it's a better usage. IT and business alignment. This is what it's really all about. Make sure that IT and the business are in alignment. So you need the tools that can explain it to both IT in an easy format and obviously the business. Prevention. I mentioned earlier on about problems occurring. Things don't tend to, especially in the mainframe world, things tend not to go just bang in the night. It's a very slow degradation. We want to stop that. You know, the obvious example is something like you drive a car, if something's going wrong with the car, you'll get a little light that will flash up on your dashboard. Hey, I'll go fix that. Go to the garage the next day or that day, you get it fixed. you move on. That's the type of approach we're looking at. Observability and analytics: explore, report, predict with the right data. Analytics: you understand the data and use it. Whoops, sorry about that. Observability and analytics. DevOps. DevOps is one of these terms that every man and his dog is using, but it's there and we all understand it, and it needs to be used with capacity automation. Automate as much as you've got. FinOps, which I talked about, goes hand in hand with cost control. And last but not least, predictive ops and resource planning. If you have your business is growing, you've got the analytics, you're automating lots of stuff, you've got control of cost control, and all of a sudden IBM come to you and say, hey, look, we've got a brand new generation of mainframes, the latest one being an IBM Z16. We believe you should upgrade to it. Understand, take your current data, get the specs of the new Z16 or Z16s. What will it do for you? Is it worthwhile? Make sure that it's cost effective. All right. And again, you're going to go careful here, because IBM are doing all sorts of price increases at the moment certainly for the beginning of the new year. Look at what your IBM MLC will cost you next year versus now, and also what the maintenance is going to be on your hardware and the cost of your OTC products. And if somebody isn't quite sure, or I can help you understand some of these terms, just drop me an email and I'll happily talk about what OTC is, what AWLC is, etc. The direct benefits: understand your system. What's going on with my environment at all times? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. What are your critical KPIs? And we want to make sure that there are no anomalies. And by understanding your data, you can do this. You can track it. You can see how you're going. There's a path. Understand the organization and dependencies of your infrastructure. And this is really important, because as the barriers of the mainframe come down, the mainframe is going to be used in a different way with the non-Z stuff. And it's just a mainframe server. That's all it now is. So things are going to change, especially as more and more applications want to leverage data from every piece of hardware and software. Connect technical data to its business context. And again, this is where we will think about, okay, I've got this technical data. What does it mean to the business? How can I relate it? Understand that if, for example, let's say we import an Excel spreadsheet that's got sales data on it. How much is that going to cost us? Which part of the business is performing or underperforming? Some of our users that we have across the world. And on that note, I would like to thank you very much.